Right. My name is Tristan Watson, and this is going to be my athlete case study, number 21. This is over Doug Brown. So I'm just going to share with y'all what my nutritional recommendations are, and we're going to learn about Doug Brown, what he does, where he lives, and what are his physical attributes, goals, and just going over his full athlete profile here. So starting off, we're going to go over his bio. So his name is Doug Brown. He is 25 years old. He is a GA student and research assistant. He is from Santa Cruz, California. His preferred sport is track, so he runs the 800 and 1200 meter. So he is a runner. He competes in track, and he does the 800 and 1200 here. Other questionnaire information is the time of day that he prefers to train is going to be in the early in the morning. If he does train twice a day, it would be from 2 to 4 p.m. So early morning, he would do his running. Afternoon, he would do his resistance or strength training. The goals for the next 8 weeks is going to be a personal record in his running times. So he shared with me that this is his last season. He would like to get some PRs. He would like to get some personal bests in his events. So that's going to be one of his goals for the next 8 weeks. And then also, he wants to gain muscle to generate more power. So he thinks that would be a big advantage for him going forward to get better times, is generating more power throughout his race. So those will be his goals for the next 8 weeks. And over the next 8 weeks, they're going into a transition to their outdoor track season. So now they're going to the outdoor track season, getting started here in a little bit. So for in season for outdoor track, he runs and he swims. So he does a little bit of cross training here. So with his programming, he runs and swims, and then also incorporates a little bit of resistance training. So he likes to eat his meals throughout the day. So I asked if he likes to just eat a big meal in the morning, big meal at night. What does he like to eat throughout the day? And he says he likes to eat even meals throughout the day. So I took that into consideration when I was making his meal plan. So that's a little bit more about him. He also is an amputee. So he had his right lower leg amputated after a car accident when he was about 12 years old. So that's going to be a major consideration here. He weighs 175 pounds, so about 79.5 kgs. He is 69 inches tall. Body fat percentage is about 19%. His gender at birth, and this person identifies as a male. And then, like I said, the car accident, he has a right lower leg amputated. That happened when he was about 12. So he's had this injury or this amputation for a long time. So he's learned how to cope with it, and he's been very competitive with it. So he's really aware of his situation. Allergies, pineapple and lobster. So definitely taking that into account when we're making the meal plan. He's allergic to pineapple and lobster. So absolutely none of that. And then exercise experience. So 6 years of college track, 10 years total of gymnastics and swimming. So very experienced athlete, competes at a collegiate level. So that's a good experience. And also just knowing that he is a very competitive athlete. So he is more on the experience side of this, and also a very active individual. And also medication to be aware of is Zofran, and that was the only supplementation or medication that they put. So just keeping that in mind when we're making the recommendations here. So other characteristics, these are more of the calculations that I made on my end. So I calculated this person's fat-free mass. It was about 140.8 pounds or 65 kgs of fat-free mass. So it's going to be that lean tissue or that muscle mass. And then fat mass is going to be 33 pounds, so about 15 kgs of fat mass. So relatively low here. He is a collegiate athlete. He is a runner. He runs the 800 and 1200 meters here. So next, I found the resting metabolic rate. So just the RMR, that was about 1,918 kcals per day. So after this, I used the Cunningham equation because I use the Cunningham equation to get the resting metabolic rate because he is an athlete. He is a collegiate athlete. So I wanted to take into account his fat-free mass and not just a general resting metabolic rate since he is an athlete. So I use the Cunningham equation because it takes into account the fat-free mass. So after I used that, it was a kcals of 1,918 calories per day. And then with an activity factor, since he is very active, I multiplied that by 1.73 to account for his activity level. And then it worked out to be about 3,317 kcals per day because he is very active, a track athlete, running that 800 and 1200 meter race. So nutritional recommendations. So this is what I took into account when I was making this plan. The athlete needs short duration. So he runs 800 and 1200 meters. So I mean, longer, I guess, how to word it, it's longer on the shorter duration range because that 1200 meters is a pretty long race, but we're looking at time and also the energy needs. It's relatively short. So he's running, swimming, and cross training, and also, he does a little bit of resistance training. So, very short duration, mostly an anaerobic athlete because he runs the 800 and the 1200 meter. Body composition goals. So, he wants to increase his muscle mass. That was stressed in his case study in the questionnaire. So, want to make sure we hit that and make sure we are in a surplus when we're looking at the expenditure and intake. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. And then also, he is in season. So, we want to take that into account that he's going to be doing a lot of meets, maybe not so heavy on the training side. So he is in season. So we want to make sure that we hit all his bases there because he is in season to make sure he's well fed and well replenished for each competition. So when we're looking at nutritional recommendations, the total daily energy expenditure, like we said before, was at 3,317 kcals per day. He wants to gain mass, so we want to make sure our intake is exceeding our expenditure. So that's a big thing here to make sure we are in a surplus. So about 1 pound is about 3,500 kcals. If I split that up into 7 days, when we're trying to look at our total daily energy intake, that would be about a surplus of 500 kcals per day. So we want to make sure we're about at a surplus of 500 kcals per day. So after that calculation there, we want to be about 3,800 kcals per day in a surplus to ensure that we are gaining weight and we have enough nutrition and kcals to put on mass. So the focus should be protein for muscle synthesis to make sure protein is readily available to build muscle and have that anabolic environment instead of the catabolic if you are in a deficit. So those are going to be the things to keep in mind when we're making our recommendations. So looking at carbohydrates first, so we're going to get into the macros individually here, and at the end I'll put them all together for a holistic idea. So carbohydrates, since it's short duration, it's going to be 5 to 7 grams per kilogram of body weight. So when I plug that in using his body weight, it would be about 398 to 557 grams per day. Or if we're looking at kcals, about 1,500 to 2,228 kcals per day. So majority coming from carbohydrates. He is an anaerobic athlete and he is a runner. So we want to make sure that he has enough carbohydrates and glycogen stores to keep up with the intensity of the races. So this is going to be 48 to 67% of the total kcals. So looking at a timeline here, so carbs continued. So this is going to be more of a timeline throughout the day. So pre-exercise, about 1 hour before, we want to make sure we're getting 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. Since he was about 79 kilograms, it would be 79 grams or 316 kcals 1 hour before exercise. So this would be for his morning run or his resistance training exercise in the afternoon. It would want to be liquid carbohydrates for tolerance, so we don't want to upset his GI. Even though he said in his questionnaire that he could eat like right before an exercise and he's not really bothered, we want to make sure we avoid that. So liquid if we can, just for tolerance and then not upset the GI. We also want to make sure we have a low glycemic index. So recommended for this is going to lead to improvements in time and workload to gas exchange threshold. So we want to make sure we use low GI before to make sure we can achieve a higher workload and reach our gas exchange threshold at a longer period of time or a higher workload. For during exercise, maybe on a meet day or maybe on a track meet day, you would maybe need to replenish. But for the most part, if you're running multiple events, you might need to replenish. He's only running 2 events, so this one's not really important. If you're at practice, so if they're running practices or over an hour, then maybe you would want to replenish a little bit here, maybe mouth rinse with the CHOs. But during exercise is not really important here because it's very short and just about 2 events. Maybe with practice that are a little bit prolonged and repeated sprints, you might want to replenish during exercise. But then post-exercise is going to be very important here. So about 1.5 grams per kilogram the first hour after. So we want to make sure we get 118 grams. So that's about 474 calories of carbs. And then the subsequent 4 hours after exercise, we want to make sure we're getting 1 gram per kilogram, just like the pre-exercise. So 79 grams there. And then you want to make sure these are high glycemic index foods. So this will enhance the rate of muscle glycogen resynthesis and replenish our glycogen stores for the next time we need to exercise. So big thing here is just replenishing those glycogen stores and then getting out of that catabolic state, and then also enhancing our muscle glycogen resynthesis. And then now we'll get into the next macronutrient here. So this will be protein. So C is an anaerobic, he's a runner. So I use those ranges to get his protein intake. So it'd be about 1.2 to 2 grams per kilogram per day. So that's about 95 to 159 grams of protein. When it works out to calories, it'd be 380 to 636 kcals of protein per day. Usually works out to be 10 to 15%, could even get up to 20% of your intake. And then very big emphasis on this one because he wants to put on muscle mass. So we want to make sure we hit this on the top end range. So if you want protein synthesis put on the muscle mass, we might want to lean towards the top end of this range to ensure for that to happen. Supplements that could help with this, because it's really hard to get protein in just through the foods there. You'd have to intake a lot. Looking at casein and whey. So this would be 30 to 40 minutes before sleep or after a workout. This is a good way to get our protein in very quickly through a drink. This will increase muscle synthesis and hypertrophy. So there's studies that show that whey is more absorbed by the muscles here. So it could help with muscle synthesis. And then also this would be good after workout or before sleep to help with that muscle repair here. Also leucine, this will stimulate the cell by signaling for muscle protein synthesis. So this could be supplemented with 2 to 3 grams post-exercise to help with that protein synthesis. What it does is it increases the blood leucine concentration, which would increase the muscle protein synthesis. So that's a relationship that those two have together. So if you increase leucine, it will increase the muscle protein synthesis as well. So now looking into fats. So fats is not really, it's important to hit, but it's not as important as the other two macros. So this is kind of the filler. So after I calculated carbs and protein, I would just fill the gap with the rest of the total daily energy intake with fats. So he's not an ultra endurance runner. So fats isn't a really big thing I would want to hit. The carbs and protein kind of took the front seat for that, and just kind of filling in the gaps with the fats. So it'd be about 760 kcals to 1,330 kcals per day of fat. So like I said, he's not ultra endurance. So mainly he wants to put on muscle, and he's an anaerobic athlete. So carbs and protein took the front seat for this one. And then I kind of filled the rest of the energy intake with fats. So the finalized recommendation, the calculations, I just wanted to give him a clear cut number he would want to hit, because he said in his questionnaire that he does not like counting macros. He hasn't done them before. He's never really kept a good food diary. So I think giving him a clear cut number would help him a whole lot. And then making sure we hit those numbers just in the actual program for the food for the daily diary thing. So giving a clear cut would help him a whole lot because he's unsure about how to do that. So for carbs, it worked out to be 2,228 kcals or 557 grams. So I chose that range. So I picked a spot in between that range that best fit his needs. And then also for protein, it was 636 kcals or 159 grams of protein. So the top end of that range, we want to make sure we hit. That would be about 17% of the energy intake. And then fats fill in that gap with 936 kcals or 104 grams of fat to make sure we have that caloric surplus. So at the end, when we added all this together, it was 3,800 in kcals for all the macronutrients. This would be optimal for his nutritional recommendation based on what his needs are and what his goals are. So looking at other micronutrients and supplements, the first one I would say for him to supplement with is calcium. So this aids in bone and muscle health. So this will regulate myoblasts and regeneration to enhance muscle contraction. So calcium is needed for muscle contraction. If we can enhance that contraction through supplementation of calcium, then we would want to do that. And also it would regulate myoblasts. So that also helps with the regeneration of muscle. So calcium would be a big supplement here that I would definitely recommend for this individual. Also vitamin D, so this also regulates muscle growth and cardiac muscle growth and skeletal muscle growth with bone mineralization. So very big for the growth of the muscles and bones and making sure those are nice and strong and helps with recovery. Also sodium bicarbonate. So this one's going to be an interesting one here. So this will increase the maintenance of aerobic power. So he's an anaerobic athlete. I'm sorry, I said aerobic, but this will increase the maintenance of anaerobic power. So if he can sustain a higher anaerobic power for longer, then this would decrease fatigue. So sodium bicarbonate supplementation could decrease fatigue by buffering the accumulation of hydrogen ions. So hydrogen ions leads to muscular fatigue because of the acidic environment. So sodium bicarbonate is a base. So this can kind of buffer the accumulation of these hydrogen ions and help with muscular fatigue. So this could be an advantageous supplement here to help with that muscular fatigue and kind of prolong or kind of offset that fatigue and prolong it to a later time in the event. So that could be also interesting supplement there. And then also creatine here. This increases the rate of the PCR resynthesis after repeated contractions and high intensity exercise. So with the ATP PCR system, since he is an anaerobic athlete, this will help with that cycle. So you could probably prolong the ATP PCR system to help with this anaerobic glycolysis. So if he could prolong the ATP PCR, if he could regenerate and resynthesize that PCR, then it would be advantageous to him. And also it is shown that creatine can also increase lean body mass. So that's kind of two birds, one stone there to help with performance and also put on that lean body mass. So fluid intake here, talking about pre-exercise. So this will be 4 hours before the event or practice. We want to make sure that we're getting 5 to 7 milliliters per kilogram. So it'll be about 397 milliliters to 556 milliliters of fluid before exercise. So this is very important to be hydrated for the exercise that's about to come. So you can't just slam like all 5 to 7 milliliters per kilogram right before the exercise. So you'd want to even it out over those 4 hours and not just slamming it right before. And then during exercise, so small amounts every 15 minutes, about 100 milliliters every 15 minutes in between breaks while you're having a repeated sprints. Also, if the practices are a little long, so it's not so much for a meet day because he's only running 2 events, so 800, 1200. So this would be more for a prolonged practice and repeated sprints. So if it lasts more than an hour, you want to make sure you maybe get 1 gram of sodium per hour for the practice lasting over an hour. So just kind of supplementing with 1 gram of sodium. And also post-exercise, you'd want to get 1.5 liters for every kilogram of body weight loss during exercise. So very important for before practice, after practice, or before meet day, after meet day, to have a before and after weigh-in to see how much weight you lost to actually replenish those fluid needs. So you would do 1.5 liters for every kilogram of body weight lost. And then also sodium consumption is very important to balance those electrolytes and make sure they are replenished for the next exercise bout. And then also going into the exercise regimen. So like I said, he runs in the morning. So for their track practice, it would be in the morning, about 6 to 8 a.m. And then these were speed runs, repeated sprints, and more agility kind of power movements. So that's what they would be practicing here in the morning. So mainly just running, sprinting, agility, no resistance training in the morning, just all anaerobic power, running, sprints, and kind of working on that running form there. So some cross training with swimming, but that's going to decrease as the season starts. So like I asked in the questionnaire before, I'm like, what time of season are you? Are you preseason, postseason, in season? They said they're about to start the outdoor track season. So they're going to cut down on the swim. So like I said before, they're running here. So you want to be as close to the mode of exercise you're about to do. So cutting down on the swimming and the cross training as the season starts, which it is going to for this case study. And then also it would be advised for afternoon strength training and resistance training. So this would be about 2 to 4 p.m. So afternoon would be strength and resistance training. So it is shown that strength training twice a week will improve power in lower limbs and improve jumping and repeated sprints. So strength training very much improves your power output and then also improves jumping and repeated sprints. So I saw in this study and all the other studies that I looked at, about 80 to 95% of your 1 minute max, 1 to 3 reps, 3 to 6 sets with a 3 to 4 minute rest in between is going to improve your strength and also power of the lower limbs to increase your jumping and then repeated sprint time. So you're going to be a little bit faster because you're generating more power here. So this would be a better mode since we're in season, so we want to be careful with hypertrophy training. I know he's trying to gain muscle and kind of make soreness to regenerate to build muscle mass, but we want to be careful with hypertrophy because it is during season, and hypertrophy does increase our soreness. And soreness is not necessarily equal muscle damage. So if we can work on eccentric contractions, we could increase our damage with kind of avoiding the soreness feel. So this will increase our connective tissue and then also increase our power without feeling too much of the fatigue and soreness of the hypertrophy training. So strength training and power training would be best for this time of the season because we don't want to feel sore and super beat up going into a track meet. So I would advise mainly strength and resistance training when we're in season here. Mainly strength and power training while we're in season, and kind of avoid the hypertrophy because that it does increase soreness. So this was the recall that he gave me in his questionnaire. So super basic, not a lot of actual measurements here. So it was just the food. So I kind of took it upon myself to see what he was actually intaking, kind of measure out as best as I could. I used information on MyFitnessPal to see how much he was actually intaking before. So total here, it was about, let me see, it was about 2,624 kcals per day. So that was from his previous dietary recall. So we could see that it was kind of lacking in protein here, and there wasn't a whole lot of measurements. And when it came out to actually me doing it, it was only 2,624 kcals, which we said prior that he was expending about almost 3,200. So he was definitely in a caloric deficit. So we want to make sure we're in that surplus. So looking at this recall, he was in a deficit, so there's no way he was gaining weight. So after a little manipulation here, I'm going to move myself. Can't see my plan. So this would be the sample meal plan that I made. So this is going to be a lot more in depth and actually hitting his macros here as best as I could. So for the 5 a.m., this would be pre-run. So he was going to run at 6. So this is an hour before his workout. We want to get a berry breakfast smoothie, avoiding pineapple because he said he has an allergy. So definitely not making sure there's not pineapple in there. But a berry breakfast smoothie plus Gatorade here to get 74 grams of carbs. So that's going to be equal to about 190 kcals. And then at 8:15, this would be a post-workout. We're going to get a lot of food in here because we're in that catabolic state after a workout. So we're going to get 2 cups of jasmine rice, 1 cup of hash browns, 5 ounces of ground sirloin, hot sauce, because he said he had hot sauce in his previous one. So I guess he likes hot sauce. I do too, but it gets stuffed down a little bit easier if you do like it. And then also 8 ounces of orange juice there. So this would be 90 grams of carbs, 39 grams of protein, and then 22.5 grams of fat. That's going to equal about 861 kcals. So a bigger meal there because it's post-exercise. You will probably be hungry, and we want to get out of that catabolic state and shift over to anabolic. Big emphasis on protein because post-workout here, and then also big emphasis on carbs because of post-workout. And then at 11 a.m., we want to get that protein shake in because he wants to hit that protein intake because he wants to put on muscle here. So we got a whey shake with 2 bananas, scoop of peanut butter, and then also water to mix it with. So it'd be about 57 grams of carbs, 33 grams of protein, 18 grams of fat for a total of 515 kcals. And then 1 p.m., this would be 1 hour before his 2 to 4 p.m. workout. It would be 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on oat bread. So I picked oat bread because that would be a low glycemic index before workout here. So it'd be about 66 grams of carbs, 30 grams of protein, 8 grams of fat, which would be 880 kcals there. So then at 4:15, this would be 15 minutes after that resistance training workout. We're going to take another protein shake to make sure we get that protein in right after a workout, and then also add some sugars and carbs there to help us with that protein synthesis, because it's shown with co-consumption of sugar and carbs with protein, it helps with the protein synthesis there and getting it to the working muscles. So we got 80 grams of carbs, 26 grams of protein, and 2 grams of fat, equaling 442 kcals total. And then 7 p.m., this would be kind of his big dinner here. So it'd be 1 cup of spaghetti noodles, 1 cup of spaghetti sauce, 8 ounces of ground sirloin, 1 cooked zucchini here, and then 1 ounce of oat milk. So it's pretty much just spaghetti with meat sauce with zucchini, and then 1 ounce of oat milk there. So it'd be 68 grams of carbs, 47 grams of protein, and 25 grams of fat. So it's going to be a big meal here, big meal, big last actual meal here before the bed. And then at 9 p.m., this will be 30 to 40 minutes before he actually goes to sleep. We want to get some protein in because it was shown protein right before sleep or right after workout is very important for the recovery of the muscles. So as you're sleeping, you want to have protein synthesis. So we're making those, letting those muscles recover and also resynthesize here. So very important to get protein in right before sleep. So getting that whey shake in right before bed. So totals here, I know I kind of overshot the protein here. So what I would advise is I would work back. I just wanted to make sure that he did hit the protein for muscle synthesis. So I would probably cut back on the protein and then add on to the carbs or maybe throw in some fat there. But that's just something that was error on my point. But we did hit the 3,803 calories, which would be that caloric surplus we would need for muscle synthesis and to gain weight. So that was my main goal there. I probably could have cut down on the protein, but I wanted to make sure we got enough there. And then also the right amount of carbs for this athlete here. So if I were to redo it, I would definitely want to cut down on the protein, maybe throw some carbs in and then more fats in here just to make it a little bit more balanced and making sure we hit all those. But they are all within the ranges, but I definitely would have cut back on protein because that was kind of a lot there. But we are in that 3,803 calories. So that's a surplus that we were trying to hit. So we're all good to go there for weight gain and not that caloric deficit where we would have the weight loss. So going further here, I'm ending on his special considerations. So like I was saying before, he has his right lower leg amputated. So that's going to be his hugest that would be his largest special consideration here because that's going to lead to compensation and adaptations. And he was also concerned about muscle tone and like his muscle volume. So with that leg amputation, he was always concerned about like his compensation and how he compensated using the prosthetic. So it's very big for exercise modification and trying to isolate movements as much as you can and try to work without that prosthetic because it was shown that using that prosthetic will kind of lead to compensations. And then you would want to evaluate the muscles individually. So you would want to evaluate the adductor, the rectus femoris, and hamstring because those are shown to have significant changes after the amputation on that amputated leg. So he was amputated from the knee down. So you'd want to make sure those muscles aren't undergoing too much atrophy and they're kind of keeping up with the uninjured leg. So usually it is seen in the unilateral amputation instead of the bilateral, this major compensation here. So if available, you can use DEXA scans, MRI scans to evaluate changes in the muscle volume, or you could just do kind of basic eye tests to see muscular tone, or even strength tests to evaluate each of those muscle groups. So also you'd want to monitor muscular fatigue in the non-amputated leg, since the leg that it is amputated is going to experience, is going to experience a lot less fatigue because you're missing that lower half of your leg. So monitoring the fatigue of your calf and also the ankle fatigue, all the muscles around your ankle would be huge because on the amputated leg, you don't have that consideration. So you're going to have a lot of compensation on that unamputated leg. So that was going to be the major considerations here. So these are my references that I use. So hopefully this was a good in-depth nutritional recommendation for this athlete. So it's just going to be all his major macros there and also some supplemental stuff that he could use to better his performance. So hopefully y'all enjoyed and learned a little bit more about my athlete and yeah, have a great day.